What's up, No Nation? Welcome to BROCKtober. It is officially time to start a new month with a new quarterback. And can he give Florida State a spark on offense? Because goodness gracious, Michael, we need it right now in the worst kind of way. So Florida State coming off another disappointing performance, this time getting their butts handed to them by SMU. There's been a couple of different changes in tone this week with Mike Norvell. So we got a lot to talk about. Obviously, you guys know that it's been a week since we recorded an episode. There's been some things going on. Most of you guys are well aware that I do live in the Carolinas. So, just like winning a game without scoring points, Michael, it's hard to do a podcast without power and internet.
That's right.
So hopefully now that we are back, Florida State's offense will be back as well. So we appreciate you guys' patience as we get these things hammered out. Obviously, we tried to run it off of some cell phone hotspots and a generator. Just didn't work out. So we were committed to you guys. We were trying harder than the team was on Saturday, that's for sure. But we are back. It feels good to be back with you guys. So thank you so much for tuning in. And first off, I do want to say again that most of you guys know, obviously, that I do live in the Carolinas, as I just mentioned. Obviously, our thoughts and prayers are with all of those affected by the storms. The things that are going on in Western North Carolina are just unthinkable. So, man, sometimes, there's just more to life than football. To be honest, I've kind of had my attention focused on that lately, really, because it's so close to home. It's a place that is near and dear to my heart. So I've kind of been a little bit checked out with, also not having power. So definitely want to send our thoughts and prayers to those guys in that part of the state. But we're back. We're ready to talk about some Florida State football, as painful as that may or may not be. We got some new things to talk about at least. But Michael, thank you so much for joining me, my friend. And it feels good to be back.
Yeah, it feels good to be back, Jesse. Thanks for having me. And yeah, just real quick, man, just for those that are suffering through just the devastation of Hurricane Helene, whether that's loss of house or loss of possessions, loss of a loved one, just know, man, our hearts go out to you. You're in our thoughts, in our prayers, and there are resources out there, Convoy of Hope, Samaritan, and also the FEMA and all those organizations there. So don't feel like you're without hope. I know it's devastating right now, but just know that there are people out there that are willing and ready to help if you so select. So just we're with you in this and praying for you. But yeah, on the other side of this, just like you said, there's a lot bigger things than football, but here we are talking about football. It is good to be back in order to get our little vent session out of the way and kind of look forward to the rest of the season and kind of what's going to happen now. BROCKtober's here, something we've been pining for, Jesse, and asking for. And so now it's finally good to see what can come with Brock Glenn at the helm.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, unfortunately, you did see the switch in the end of the SMU game, and Mike Norvell said that they were going to make the switch anyway. It kind of felt like a little bit too late in that game. I think it was just kind of a desperation move because the game was already over.
Right.
But it does come on the heels, of course, of DJU dealing with a injury to his throwing hand. And look, no matter what your feelings are about DJU, you never want to see anybody get hurt. I mean, he's out there, he's trying. The guy was literally like, I think, putting his finger back in place while he was. He's trying. You know what I mean? That doesn't mean he's good. Couldn't throw before the finger injury, so it's probably not going to. It's only compounding things. So, we want to wish him a speedy recovery.
Yes.
Maybe he'll be ready like right after the Florida game.
That'd be great.
So that would be perfect timing. So right after the season ends, we hope you're okay. But with that being said, Florida State has another terrible offensive performance, man. I guess you're incrementally getting better with your points here, like 2 points at a time, but it's just not enough. And really, there's at this point, we've seen enough of this team that there's really no point in going through these games, detailing every little mistake and every little play and everything bad that's happened. You guys watch the games, or maybe you didn't if you were smart. Just stop watching because there's better things to do on Saturday. But this was there's no point in really detailing it. But man, this really was. I think the wheels came off, right? I'd kind of joked, I told people before, where it felt like, imagine you're a car and like the lug nuts are not on the wheels, but the wheels have not fallen off the car. It felt like on Saturday, the wheels just blew off the car because this was by far the worst game they've had all season. And really, as we transition into talking about what's going on with Florida State, I do think that this was a wake-up call for Mike Norvell because, you think back throughout the season, like Georgia Tech was relatively close. Boston College was a couple of scores, but it wasn't a blowout, and you felt like maybe that was a hangover game. Memphis was a severe disappointment, but it was close. And then you also follow that up with a win at Cal. This one, it got out of hand. This was the first time they've been blown out. And so I really think this was a kind of a punch in the gut to Mike Norvell. I think this kind of woke him up a little bit. And I think he has, because there's been a different tone that he took in the presser this week, right? You saw some younger guys get in the second half of that game. You saw Landon Thomas get in. You saw Brock Glenn get in. You saw a couple of Mari Williams got in. Some of the younger guys got into this game. But the different tone in the presser, he called out position groups. He challenged the team. He even said that, he was looking at some things. We'll talk about the depth chart comment in just a second. But I really do think seeing what happened against SMU, and look, they whooped us. That's not to take anything away from SMU. That SMU team is not special. They are not great. But I think this was the first kind of realization, the reality moment for Mike Norvell that's like, look, I can't fix this year. It's just not. It's the water is under the bridge at this point. There's no fixing 2024. I have to figure out something new, something different, something for the future, whether that be young guys, whether that be challenging this team, whatever the case may be. I got to try something different because I can't fix this with what we've been doing the first 5 games of the season.
Yeah, I mean, that SMU game was a sheer, beatdown. It was eye-opening. I mean, they doubled up the yardage almost. I think it was over 400 yards for SMU and about 300 to 2. I think it was like 285 for Florida State. 3 interceptions. The offense did not look good except for one drive. The defense, for the first time all season long, you saw the secondary just like get exposed, and that was supposed to be one of the best parts of the team. And I actually think I agree with you that this was definitely an eye opener, but I actually think for Mike Norvell, the eye opener was there's an image that's been floating around social media for quite some time now since the Boston College game. I think it was just 7-0 Florida State in the second quarter or something like that. And Mike Norvell has his hand, he's on the sideline, he has his hands on his knees, and his eyes just has like this just crazy, like psycho, like, what am I watching right now? Yeah. And so that image has been floating around for some time. I think that moment was when he realized, oh crap, this is not what, like, Georgia Tech was kind of like, okay, maybe that's an aberration. Maybe that's just, first game jitters. We didn't play well, but like, we have the ability. I think in that moment when Boston College just went right down and scored, I think he was like, what in the world is going on? I think that was a realization there. I think SMU was like, okay, you know what? This is it. The season's pretty much over in his head. He's not going to say this out loud. The season's pretty much over in my mind, and I can't hide these guys anymore. I'm usually the eternal optimist. I cannot be optimistic anymore. So we're going to tell it like it is, and we're going to break some hearts, and we're going to play the players we need to play. And we're going to try to do the things we can do to try to, like, I don't know, win a game. But I can't be this like optimist anymore because the fans don't want it. Let me just tell you, Mike Norvell, we don't want it anymore. We need you to be real. Yeah. The program doesn't want it. The media doesn't want it. ESPN and all those guys are just sitting back there smoking cigars, having a blast about Florida State sucking this year. Like, no more Mr. Nice Guy. This is Mike's villain arch right now. He's got to set a different tone. And I mean, gosh, I think you maybe brought it up or maybe not, but even just what you told me before we started recording was about the races today. Like, the stupid races that just it's embarrassing that we keep posting stuff like this every week.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess with the races, I think it's like, he's got to be consistent, right? Because I get that part. I don't like it.
Consistency is not working.
Right. I get that. But like, if you change your method, that's the one thing about Mike Norvell. He has at least been, and he does need to change some things, but he at least has been consistent with his messaging the entire time. But I do think you're right. When you look at the Boston College game, I think that was a stark realization where he's like, this isn't going to be what I thought it was going to be. But the prideful coach within him was probably like, okay, but we can fix this, right? It's only 2 games. We can maybe get some things turned around and beat some teams. But I think at some point, now after you get blown out by SMU and you're sitting at 1-4, staring down, the barrel of getting your face kicked in once again by Clemson, more than likely, I think in the heart of your schedule where you got at least probably 3 blowout losses between Miami and Notre Dame coming as well, I think it's where he's like, look, man, if we'd have said before, like I've said this all along, I didn't think you were going to see a youth movement until after Clemson, because if he did that, I think it sent a message that he's punting on the season and that he can't fix it as a coach. And that's a hard thing for a coach that makes $10 million a year to admit. But I think now, like you said, I think it's where I think he's very good at blocking out noise. But at some point, he's probably like, look, man, I'm doing what we did to get where we were at before. These guys just aren't it. And so, like, I can't keep taking it to the chest for them when they're not doing what I'm asking them to do, because I know they can't be coaching them to do this. And so it's like, I think he is, like you said, man, he's finally, because there were some things in that press conference. And if you haven't heard it, I highly encourage you to go listen to it. His message changed. And there's some things where he actually caught himself, like if you think you're
times.
Right. Like if you think you're one of them, if you think you're what you think you are, like he wanted to, like, if you think you a bad mamma jamma, then you need to be out on the field acting like one. And so like he called him out. I mean, he challenged that team. And so now will they respond? I don't know, because he was asked, and like you said, man, I think he's done with coach speak because he knows everyone else is done with coach speak. Like, we don't want to hear it anymore, man. You can't sit here and tell me, oh, we're just, it's not translating and this, that,
execution.
Man, nothing is translating. And so, like, I think it's the onus is really falling on him, and it does. But he did say that, like, yeah, I would see it if there were guys quitting on this team, and we will remove them from the picture if that is the case. But man, when we see it on Saturdays, there's so many guys, and he did actually call them out for loafing in this press conference today. But you see the sad effort in the race. And so it's like, while the tone changed, while all that sounds good, while you bring in a new quarterback, while you're bringing in younger guys, maybe it gives you a spark. You still see it, right? You still see that type of stuff. You still see where, like, guys are loafing on Saturdays. You still see where no one is participating in this race, and the ones that are just a slow jog behind them. So, like, the problems in this program are not going to go away because of a different tone in a press conference, because of a couple different guys playing. But again, man, I think he has to do something. He has to shake things up, because it's only going to get worse as the schedule gets harder. And one thing that he did say was that he wanted an or. Basically, he would have put an or by every name on this depth chart. Yeah. And I mean, that's calling your guys out, where, like, look, no starting jobs are safe anymore, because the thing is, like, you have to find guys that are at least going to play hard. Right. Whether they're good or not, you got to find guys that are going to roll with you, and guys that are going to help you win games, and guys that aren't going to take plays off. And if you got guys that are on the field that are loafing, that aren't trying hard, he's right, man. You got to get them out of here. Like, right. It's like a medical procedure, man. You got to get the cancer out. You got to cut it out, because it's only going to infect the other parts of this roster. So you got to find these type of guys that you can roll with. That's right. But that was pretty, big talk there to say that. And he also said he doesn't care about a depth chart. He's and I think he did actually also call out some of the young guys too, where he said, like, these guys are saying, oh, I should be playing, or I should be playing, but you have to show the things that are necessary to be in that position to play. So I think he's really challenging anybody on this team, right? As well as I do, we both played football, where, like, you got to challenge everybody when it's an open competition for playing time that can be won by anybody.
That's right.
I mean, you got to challenge the young guys too. You can't just sit there and say, oh, I should be playing because we're not good.
Right.
You need to be showing that you want to take it. In practice, they used to be like, man, you want his job? Go fight him for it. You know what I'm saying? And we would roll around on the ground for a little while.
That's right.
But before I kick it back to you, I do want to say one thing, talking about the depth charts. A bit of news that did break today in that press conference is offensive guard Richie Leonard, transfer from Florida, is out for the remainder of the season with an injury. Per 247, he did actually have a successful surgery today, and he does plan on returning to FSU in 2025 on a medical red shirt. That doesn't mean he's going to return to FSU on a medical red shirt, but knowing that he did miss the last game, and now that he's pretty much, put it up for the rest of the season, that was only 4 games. You can compete in 4 games and still do a red shirt. So maybe you get him back because you're losing. I mean, really, he was your best offensive lineman right now, and you're losing basically everybody. So if he does come back, that is good, but that is one piece of news to keep in mind as we move forward. Richie Leonard, offensive guard, out for the season. Not great.
Yeah, not great, but
probably doesn't
in
matter.
the midst of a bunch of other terrible news, right? It doesn't really matter. Like,
right.
I mean, yeah, he might have been your best offensive lineman, but it takes 5 guys to play that group, and they were all 5 weren't working together simultaneously to create good space. I mean, you talk about your left tackle, who you came in saying that this was going to be an All-American candidate, and I think if I remember correctly, like at least 2 or 3 of the games, his PFF grade was the lowest in the history of offensive linemen. Like, this is terrible. You can't run counter, which is your bread and butter. You can't pass protect. I mean, part of the problem. Yes, DJ is part of that problem. He holds the ball too long, but he only gets like half a second to throw the ball there. He's getting clobbered every time he steps back to throw. You can't run the ball with any kind of consistency. Your wide receivers are not getting open. You can't move DJ around because he's obviously is not a mobile quarterback that we thought. We knew he wasn't fast, but we didn't think he was slower than molasses. Yeah. And so you can't move him around to get to the wide receivers. So yeah, this is a time for Mike Norvell to look at this and say, okay, you know what? There's no more hiding. We're going to call out what we need to call out, and we need to start being able to see like what we actually have moving forward. Now, it's unfortunate that DJ can't play because I'm sure he would have loved to have played against Clemson to take this butt whooping that is due to him and to the rest of this team. I'm sure he would have loved to have played in that game to be a part of that. So it's unfortunate for that. But, Brock Gang gets to come in. Now they get this game plan all week to see what they have in Brock. And so, as we move on, it is what it is, man. I don't know what else to say about this team. They're just highly frustrating.
I at least think that now if you shake things up and you go with some young guys and you bring in Brock and things like that, maybe you can get some engagement out of the young guys, right? And I just think you have to figure out, like, I'm not saying when we say go youth movement, I don't think there's guys like Josh Farmer can still play by all means. He deserves to play. But there's some guys that if they're not playing well, then you need to move on from them. But that doesn't mean that the seniors who have earned it and the juniors and all those guys, they still earn that chance. But I think, like we said, man, there's no point in going into the nitty gritty of every week of this team because it's the same problems that just keep rearing their head. And they're searching for answers. I'm sure they are. But it just doesn't translate to Saturdays. And we're just done with hearing like, oh, well, this is the best practice player. Practice don't mean squat, man. It doesn't mean anything for your wins and loss column, which is what we're seeing on Saturday. So I think really what we can transition into a little bit of a broader topic here, because we talked about the look that Mike Norvell had in that game. We talked about the things with his change in tone and maybe he's stopping to hide people anymore. And this has been a really big topic on social media over the last week. So I think it's worth spending a few minutes on here. And that is Mike Norvell broken? And that's a really loaded question, right?
Very loaded.
To say somebody is broken as a person, I don't necessarily believe that, right? Because that's a really strong statement. But when you look at the way things ended last year, I mean, the whole fabric of being a coach and being a competitor and being a football player is you go out, you win games, you earn the right to compete for a championship. He did all of that. And then it was taken away from him with the snub, and then it was compounded by the Orange Bowl and what happened there. So you kind of took back-to-back beatings there. And, the thing is really like, as a Division I head coach, there's really no time off from this. Like, you might get a week or two a year. Like, it's not like Mike Norvell could go on some, retreat for a month and be like, I just got to go figure life out. I got to go like stare at the sun or something like that for a month and figure life out. Like, it's just, there's never a break in the process. But man, something has to be fundamentally wrong with him and this team and this program, because he doesn't look the same. And I understand it's hard to have the fire when you know that you're 1-4 and you're not doing well. But like, you don't see one of the big things that have come out over the past week too is the resurfacing of that Deuce Spann video where, like, you saw him get in Deuce Spann's face and kind of yell at him and get him back in line when Deuce was frustrated and things like that. You've seen the pictures where, like, he's chewing on a ref for a bad call. You just don't see the fire and the fight from him. And I think the problem is the team embodies a lot of what the coaches display on throughout practice and on Saturdays. And so I think, like, him not having the fire that he normally has, that we've seen from him over the past 2 years, the team has kind of taken that embodiment too, because this team has really no heart. They have no fight. They don't look like they really even care to be there on Saturdays. And so I think that, unfortunately, has been a byproduct of what has happened to Mike Norvell. So, like, do I think he forgot how to coach? No, I don't think so. But it's like you pose the question, how did this happen, man? How did this team become this bad? Because, when you watch Florida State play on Saturdays, it's not even like, oh, well, we lost, or, we tried hard and we missed out on a play here or play. Like, they are the worst team on every Saturday across college football in general. They can't do anything right. And so it's like, how did it fall this far, this fast? So there has to be something that is fundamentally broken. But I think you have to come to the realization that regardless of whether he is broken or not, this is not going to get fixed in 2024. So he has to figure out how to ground himself and realize that, like, man, I'm not fixing this year. I got to figure out how to, what am I going to do going forward, right? And we can get into why maybe we think that he's still a good coach, or maybe he's broken, or what his timeline is. I don't think he forgot how to coach, man. I mean, the thing is, I just think right now, I think he's a little bit lost in the wilderness, right? I think he's just kind of like, man, I didn't expect this, because you said it, like, we were talking about this before the show. He was open and public about how good he thought this team was going to be. So to see this, I think he's just bewildered right now. And I know you have a lot of thoughts on this, so I want to kick it to you. But I think for me, it's really, he's loyal to a fault, right? And I think he thinks that he can save everybody. I think with some of these players, you got to realize that some of them aren't it, and you got to let them go. You have to move on. I think with the staff, look, man, I get it. It's hard to make changes when you just went 23-4 over 2 years. It's hard to be like, yeah, that was great. Guess what? We won the ACC championship. You're fired. That's hard. But they have not held themselves to the standard that Florida State needs to be at in recruiting, and with trying to make some of these players who just aren't good work. Like, I'm sorry, Kyle Morlock. I get Mike Norvell loves him. I get he thinks he's a great guy. I get he brought him here and believes in him. He does not need to play for Florida State. Get him off the field. I think that's one of the biggest problems, is the recruiting and the undying loyalty to guys who are, this is about wins and losses, man. I understand there's more to the game than this. You're not here to be their best friend. You're not here to be their guidance counselor. You're here to win games. That's why you make $10 million. So to me, what I would like to see going forward, as I kick it to you, I would like to see Mike Norvell be ruthless, right? You need to be a Kirby Smart type of coach. You need to be that ruthless guy. No more being everybody's friend. It's time to hold this staff and these players accountable. If they can't recruit, get them off this staff. If they don't want to play hard, get them off this roster. It's time to stop saving people and start doing what you know how to do, and that's win football games.
Yeah. What you said was absolutely right. And what I'll follow up to this is, I mean, you have to go back to the beginning. I mean, let's just start with the whole mantra that Mike Norvell came in with. He said that, that Florida State, they're going to climb, right? This whole idea that if you live out this process, if you do these things, if you show up every day and you put your best foot forward, and you figure out how to play your best, both on the field and off the field. You be the best person you can be. You be the best player you can be. You do all the little things that, as you climb, it's not a guarantee of success, but it will put you in position to achieve success if it's there for you, right? And everybody, I mean, from day one, I mean, remember when he kicked off the team, a high recruit running back, because they were loafing in practice, and he kicked him off the team, said, nah, you got to get out of here, right? And that really showed up. There was a comment that was made by one of the media outlet guys. He said he was speaking with an administrator one day, and the administrator said to him, this is going to be different because Mike's not going to put up with this stuff. And it was like night and day. I mean, because man, they had just forced that program had just gone through the toilet. I mean, you talk about Jimbo, right? Basically basically quitting after that Alabama game in 2017, and they weren't out recruiting, they weren't out doing anything. It didn't matter. They're taking butt whoopings while he's standing on the sidelines looking at his play call sheet, wondering what he can cook up next, right? And so Jimbo was broken. Now, there's a difference. Here's what I want to say about to really get to this. There's a difference between Jimbo broken and what Mike Norvell is experiencing. Jimbo went through some serious personal life situation things that broke him, and it spilled over into his coaching. Mike Norvell is not broken as a person.
No.
He definitely might be broken as a coach, though.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is because when you tell these players to climb, when you tell these players you're not going to put up with anything else but their best, after being coddled by Willie Taggart, where they had no accountability, absolutely nothing, it was a dumpster fire of a program, you come in, you go 3-8 the first year. You lose to Jacksonville State. You were at that game. Don't you remember that game?
Do I ever?
Right?
I thought we would never get back there. Boy, was I wrong.
Boy, were we wrong, right? Like you go 5-3. You see this climb, and the guys start buying in. Like, okay, so if I do the right thing, if I show up, I do this consistency, success will come. Success will come. Success will come. They go 10-3. They beat Oklahoma in the Cheez-It Bowl. We're all celebrating. Oh my gosh! We go into the offseason. We start recruiting some really good portal players. We get a couple good high school players. We get snub on some high school players. But then we win the summer lottery of Keon Coleman, and now we're dreaming. We're dreaming big. And we start the season. We blow out LSU. It's like a FSU tradition to beat LSU. And then we go and we win. We win 13 games. And yes, we lose Jordan Travis in the process. And then the snub happens. And here's what happened with the snub. This is why till my last dying breath, and hopefully I'm like in my late 80s when I take my last breath, I will tell you that the snub has done more damage to this program than anything else has ever done. The snub has done more damage because what the snub did, Jesse, and you guys listening on podcasts and on YouTube, is the snub told these players that the climb doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how much work you put in. It doesn't matter how much effort you put in. It doesn't matter if you do the little things right. At the end of the day, 10 people on an invitational committee controls your ability to find success, right? And that broke Mike Norvell because here's why. Immediately after that, go back and watch that press conference with him and Kirby Smart. Man, he looked different. Mike is an eternal optimist. He said that earlier. And he looked like somebody had just told him his favorite person in the world just died, right? In that moment. And then he had to immediately go out and recruit. They didn't have time to sit with those players, right? And then what happened? And again, you will never hear me blame those players for opting out. But man, that was bad.
Yeah.
They quit. They quit because what they were told is that everything they did not matter. So go and get your money in the NFL. And that's what they did. He said, all right, we're done. And so then Mike had to stand on that field and watch his team get clobbered by Georgia. And Georgia showed absolutely no mercy, which they shouldn't have. If I was a head coach of Georgia, I would have ran it up on them as much as possible to show the nation that I should have been in the playoffs, right? And then Mike had to come in that interview and sit through that. And you just look at his eyes. He just looks like he's completely spaced out. So they go into the offseason. They got to recruit now, right? They got to recruit. And now here's what's happening. You are now having to try to convince these high schoolers, these portal players, that Florida State is still the place to be, that Florida State can still be elite and be successful if they come here. And they're asking questions like, but the playoff won't even let you in. This ain't going to happen. And you're like, well, the 12-team playoff, it won't happen ever again, blah, 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 blah. And now they're saying, okay, yeah, sure, we might still be interested, but the asking price, what I was going to have you pay me has gone up double, has gone up triple. Then you have players on your own team saying, man, why am I staying here for this money? I can go get this money. I mean, TJ Lundy left to go to Colorado. And then when they basically lied about NIL, he came back. But you had Patrick Payton. You had people holding you hostage for more money, right? So then they go through all that. And then when they look in the portal, they're having to get portal players that, Jesse, I don't care. No one can convince me differently. They would have not touched most of those portal players outside of Marvin Jones Jr. and maybe Sione, Sione
Aloha. Yeah.
Loaleha. They outside of that, I don't think they would have touched most of those portal players had they been able to go to the playoffs. They would have had their pick of choosing to get to the portal. Also, programs like Georgia, programs like Bama, programs like Ohio State started actually dipping into the portal too. And they got bigger budgets, bigger money, more success. And I think it forced Mike Norvell and this coaching staff to pay for players double their rate, but not double their talent. Now, on the composite score, yes, I mean, we talked about this. FSU is ranked 13th in total 247 composite talent. But man, Roydell Williams, Malik Benson, these are backups. I mean, Nick Saban said it on, I was kind of shocked that he said it, but he said it on ESPN Game Day. He said there's a reason why these guys are in the portal. There's a reason why. Now, not everybody's like that, right? And so then you come into the season, and Mike, the eternal optimist, says, okay, I got to shake myself out of this, and I'm going to believe the best. And maybe they were in practice showing the ability to run the ball, to play action. Receivers were getting open. But early on, remember, Jesse, how we kept saying early on during the summer, we're hearing a lot of bad stuff about the offense, hearing a lot of great stuff about the defense. Should we be concerned? It's early. And then we started hearing good stuff about the offense, right? No, we should have stuck to our guns.
Yeah.
There was a problem brewing. And so now this is the situation that we're in. Again, I will say this, and I'll throw this back to you. Mike Norvell is not a broken person, but the snub broke him as a coach. And the only thing that I think, this is Michael, and I'm not paid $10 million to figure this out. I'd love to be paid $10 million to figure this out, but I'm not. The only thing I think that can fix this is a complete, literally cardiac arrest of this program and a resetting of the heart. You're a paramedic. You know what that can do for the body, right? That's what needs to happen to Florida State. Man, in the offseason, I know we'll get to this later, but man, there needs to be an overhaul of this program. Oh, I mean, from top to bottom. You got to kick out every single player that isn't bought into the message. And you need to go and well, we'll get into this later, but there's some things you got to do.
I mean, I agree. I think you really just have to wash the slate clean. You have to look at everyone on your coaching staff, everyone on your off the field staff, everyone on the support staff, everyone in the locker room who can't help you make this right. Because, I mean, you bring up a lot of good points. And I think, that was the one thing, like you said, I always understood the opting out for the guys who were in the NFL draft talk and stuff like that. But the one thing I always hated was that after the snub, a lot of the guys who were on that team that got snubbed, they just left. And they went and there was nothing to them because they went and got their money. And then in the draft, and then Mike Norvell was left to take that beating kind of by himself. I mean, again, you had a lot of other players that were there on the field, but a lot of them weren't part of that team that got snubbed. And so that's why I think it's a good conversation to have, because, there is NIL, there is transfer portal, there are teams built just like Florida State all around the college football landscape. But you always look back and go, why are we the only ones that are having these problems? Because we were the only ones that got snubbed. Like you said, man, the message, I think, just kind of falls on deaf ears now. I think it turned like that singular event, well, dual event, because the Orange Bowl didn't help either. It really turned the culture around that he had spent so much time building, and it turned Florida State into a very individualistic type of culture. Like, I'm going to go get mine, because if we can't do this as a team, I'm at least going to make sure I get paid and I go to the NFL, and a lot of I, and not a lot of we, and playing for the name on the front of your jersey. Now you're playing for the name on the back of your jersey. And I think it's broken things. And I think Mike Norvell, they obviously, like we've talked about 100 times before, they didn't foresee this coming. So they had to kind of figure this out on the fly. And then I think it was one of those where, like, man, the things where the pranks where, like, you're just sitting there in your chair and someone kicks the leg out from under your chair and it falls out from under you. Like, I don't think he expected to have to replace staff. I thought they would be able, he probably thought they could go into the portal and get what they wanted. He didn't see any of this coming. So he probably wasn't out saying, all right, well, this guy really ain't been recruiting good enough, so maybe I should look at replacing him, because we just went 13-0. I think we can get by. We can carry this momentum and get these guys. But then it turns out that it's like, oh, man, this didn't work. I didn't think I was going to have to pivot this fast. And
Right.
now you
Right.
go into the season, it's too late. Like you can't
Right.
just all of a sudden overhaul your staff, in February. Like it's just too
Right.
late. You can't
Well,
just go out and get all these new people. So I think it was such a shell shock moment that like you didn't have time to recover.
right.
And I think, and I'll kick it back to you, but I also think that too, like there's the sayings, things like the perfect storms and all
Right.
these things, right? And I really think that the anti-perfect storm, I guess you want to say, really happened to Florida State, right? Like you had a very veteran team full of very good transfers with a
Right.
staff that I feel like can coach. Like I think these guys can coach. I think they can do a good job coaching. I just don't think they do a good enough job recruiting. And so like you had not restocked the cabinet well enough to
Yeah.
be able to bring in those high school recruits. So then once you lost that top layer of your most talented veteran experienced guys, you brought in a bunch of guys who weren't quite up to that standard that you
Right.
were trying, that you painted your own picture, right? You came out and said, this is the best, most explosive, fastest team and all that. They said this was the best offensive line that we ever had. Like
Right.
they said all that stuff. So you set yourself up. Like had Mike Norvell had come out and said like, all right, well, we lost a lot.
Right.
We got to roll with some young guys. We're going to get some pieces out of Porter. We're going to see what can happen and set those expectations. Maybe this wouldn't feel so bad. But I think the fact that they set themselves up thinking they were going to go on another run and then completely misreading the room with what they did and being forced, like you said, to take some guys that had the snub of not happen, they probably would have never touched these guys because they were backups at other places. Had you have recruited better over the first 4 years of your tenure, you wouldn't have needed these guys to begin with. So I think it's just, man, it was the perfect storm of all these bad things happened at the wrong time. Like, had the snub of happened in 2022 and then all those guys came back for 2023 like they did to try and win the championship, we wouldn't be having this conversation. You would have just roll on Big River, here we go.
Right.
The problem is it all happened at once. The snub happened, everybody left Mike Norvell hanging, and you didn't recruit well enough to restock the cabinet. So now you are a sum of a lot of broken parts at one time, and the question becomes, can you fix it before the time clock hits zero? Because eventually the seat's going to get warm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're absolutely right. And then here's the thing about going back to like the portal and stuff, from our perspective, it seemed like the strategy for recruiting was, okay, let's get 10 to 15, if we can go to 20, it'd be great, of the best high school players we can get. And then we'll supplement all those holes with really great transfer portal players, right? And that worked. I mean, that worked, 2020, 2021, the high school classes were getting better. The transfer portal classes were getting even better, right? We talked about this in the summer that the boom bust rate on the transfer portal was a high, like in the 90s of boom rate of those things. But the problem was, and this is my speculation, Jesse, so I apologize. This is my speculation. But I felt like the staff, not Mike Norvell per se, not Patrick Surtain, obviously, but I think a lot of the staff, Randy, Chris Thompson, I think a lot of those guys got lazy on their recruiting. They just thought, you know what? Man, it's so much easier to recruit from the portal because I don't have to build relationships with them. I don't have to talk to them, these teenagers, all day on text messaging, on Instagram, on Snapchat, on TikTok. I don't have to do all that. I can literally just go find a player in the portal and go talk to him and figure out if he's good enough, that I think he's good enough and I can come play here, right? Because with the high school recruits, you got to build relationship. And you got these guys who've been coaching for a long time, and these kids, they won't, maybe a lot of that's talking about money and relationships. And they're just like, I don't even care anymore. I can go get a portal player. Well, when your scouting department, which has been really good for the time that you've been there, gives you a bunch of misses and you go out and get them and you don't look at them with your own eyes to assess whether or not they're good or not, this is what you end up with. You end up with a bad portal class, because this class is a bad portal class. There's no if, and, or buts about it. Jalen Lucas got hurt, so we can't really know how he would have turned out. Jaylen Brown has been a shell of himself. Malik Benson has been a shell of himself because you don't have a good enough quarterback. Roydell Williams I mean, wasn't very good, and he's
Yeah, it was a
pretty much
bust.
out for it was a bust, right? And some of the offensive linemen you brought in, like, and so you see just the laziness, and I'm going to call it that. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be mean, but that's what it is. It's been lazy recruiting on a lot of the coaching staff, which is now requiring you to say you got to go into this off season. And we'll talk about this, I know, in a little bit, but I even think now, I'm not saying you need to fire them now because there's no point in it.
No.
But even now, you should be thinking about who on this coaching staff needs to go. And I should be already putting out feelers to people saying, hey.
No, I think you're 100% right, man. I wholeheartedly agree with that because I think it's like they got lazy. Like they knew, okay, well, this guy's going to be here. Like, oh, we hit on Jermaine Johnson. Oh, we hit on Jared Verse. Of course, there will be another defensive end in there, right?
Right.
But it's like when you build your house so thin off of the transfers and it doesn't work, the collapse is catastrophic. And that's what we're seeing right now.
Correct.
Like, if you had recruited well up underneath that, like if you had built your foundation from the high school recruits, and then like the Three Little Pigs or whatever, you got if you build a straw house and those transfers don't work, and then you don't have a stone foundation, when this thing falls down, it's bad, and that's what we're seeing right now. Like you had a high bust rate. And we're like, okay, if these guys aren't working out, well, let's just bring in these highly touted high school recruits. That's what everyone else does in the country. That's what the elite programs do. You don't have the ability to do that because you didn't recruit well enough. And so now you're seeing the product of that. And I think you're right. I think the portal does kind of make them lazy because, granted, again, the portal got us where we're at. I mean, we're all like portal king this, portal king that. It's been great to us. I mean, and you think about it. I think you're right, too, when you talk about that, because like you look at, they went out and got Jamie Robinson, right? The all ACC safety. 2 weeks. I think I looked it up. I think it was around 10 days from his official visit to the time that he actually signed with Florida State. Was your leading tackler for 2 years, all that good stuff, right? They put how many years into KJ Bolden for him to flip at the last minute? So I get it. Like, I get it. It's the easy way out. But you don't know that that's always going to be there for you. And so I think that's really the hard part. And so like we can get into now like what that time clock looks like, maybe how many assistants you think need to go. But before we get into that, Michael, you know who will always be there for you, and that is our friends over at the Autograph app.
Nice.
Look, you may not care that much about Florida State. And the good thing is with the Autograph app, well, obviously, if you're watching this, you do care.
That's right.
You might be mad, but you still care. They have over 275 different teams covered by guys like us, the guys who know your team well. Not ESPN that knows a lot about or a little about a lot. Right. They know a lot about a little. So that's who brings you content on the Autograph app. MLB, NFL, NBA, WNBA, NHL, all the sports, they got it covered. It's completely free. They got fan price tickets with no fees in there. All kinds of stuff that you guys listen to podcasts. You get rewarded just for listening to this very show, but you do it in the Autograph app. You can cash that in for cool prizes and things like that. I'll link it below. It's free. It's called the Autograph app. Sign up with code SPEAR to help support those that help support us. So, Michael, let's talk about this a little bit, and then we'll get into the quarterback talk because it is BROCKtober. So we got to talk about BROCK. We got to talk about Brock a little bit. But I think this has been a very good discussion that we've had so far. Man, I think this year's a wash, right? This year it's over and it's done with. And I think that's something that I wanted to say for later in the show that we can just kind of talk about it now, right? We'll just bring this into the conversation. And that's, what does Florida State need to accomplish with the rest of this season? Because this season is a wash. Like, I think Mike Norvell, you could say that you were playing there for a little while. Like, okay, if we make a bowl, we get those extra practices. Let's face it. If the guys didn't want to play in the Orange Bowl, they're probably not going to want to play in the Tax Slayer Bowl. So that would have been a rookie camp, so to speak.
Right.
So now you're not going to make a bowl. Let's be honest.
Nope.
You need to use 2024 as your rookie camp for 2025 to see how you can fix this thing going forward. This is your bowl practice now.
That's right.
And I think as bad as it's going to be, and you're going to take some L's, right? You're going to probably get your face punched in by Clemson, Miami, Notre Dame. You can beat a team like, man, please. We've never lost to Duke ever. Please.
Oh, gosh, that'd be terrible.
I think you could probably, if you can get this team to play hard, you can beat Duke. You can probably score some points on North Carolina because Lord knows everybody else does. If you don't put up 20 points in North Carolina, against North Carolina, you can fire everybody. Everybody, you fire everybody if you don't put up 20 on UNC. If James Madison put up 50 in the first half. But I
That's
think
right.
you can, right. Like, I think you can find some positives throughout the rest of this season. You can possibly still win some games. And I really think you got to think of 2024 like 2021, right? You went
Right.
0-4, but then you rallied. You finished what, 5-3,
That's
and
right.
that momentum carried over into 2022 and then spilled over into 2023.
Right.
So I think you can find some positives, but I think you also have to understand that this is more of a veteran team than a young team like you had back then. So you need to start looking at the young guys who can
Right.
help you going forward, because, you know, if you come out again next year and you have another season like this,
Oof.
I mean, first off, like, Mike Norvell has to clean house at the end of the season. Like,
Yeah.
I think, we were talking earlier, there's some estimates that are like 3 to 5 assistants. So I think you need to go way more than that.
Oh yeah, I agree.
I don't know. It's not common to see them fire the whole staff. Like, you know, the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air meme where, like, Will's standing in the room, like, by himself, just looking around. I don't think that happens often in college football. I think you
No.
could probably save a David Johnson, a Surtain. I'm about ready to send Adam Fuller packing a suitcase, but, like, I think Fuller can maybe get another shot if you clear out the rest of your defensive staff and try there, but I would probably get rid of him too. I think you need to almost go nuclear, right? I think you need to bring in almost an entire new staff, like at least 6 to 8 guys.
Yeah.
But that clock is ticking, man, because, again, like, they fired, and I know the buyout's there, but let's just pretend like the buyout, it does exist, but you can pretend that it doesn't exist for a second. They fired Willie because they said, look, it looks like in whatever game, or what game, 15,
It was a Miami game. It was after the Miami game.
like, well, I don't know the
Second
exact
season.
I don't know the exact
Yeah.
number of games, but
Oh.
they're like, in game 18, it looks like it did in game 2.
Correct.
Well, in year 5, it looks like it did in year 1. So at some
Correct.
point, you're going to have to make the move to move
Right.
on if this thing still looks bad. And so, like, I think Mike Norvell has earned the equity from what he's done. I think he's a good enough coach. He won you the first ACC championship he won in a decade last year, to give it a shot, a fair shot. Like, let's make some changes, some wholesale changes. Let's use the rest of the season as an experimental year to figure out next year. You go into next year, look, it's probably not going to be great. You're going to have a lot of new staff changes. You're going to start with probably a loss to Alabama. But, man, I think you're looking at about 3 years if you can't get this, because the reason I say that is because let's say Luke turns out to be a good quarterback, or Brock, or Trevor, or whoever. Then I think by that time they're aging out of the program. And so, like, if you haven't won anything with any one of those guys, and you still haven't recruited well enough, you've given your new staff 2 to 3 years to fix this. And if they still haven't, then I think in 2 to 3 years it's time to make a change. But I think it all starts with using this season to set up next season, and then in the off season, you got to make wholesale changes to get this thing back on track, or at least give it a fresh perspective. Because, man, regardless of what happens at the end of this season, the stank on this program right now is going to be, you cannot recruit right now, even if you could recruit, and we know they can't. How are you going to recruit as an ACC program who's 1-4 and looks like the laughingstock of college football? You're going to get so negatively recruited, you're not going to land anyway. I'm surprised they're holding together what they got.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Listen, here's the hope that I have, that I keep thinking about. In 2012, Brian Kelly in Notre Dame with Manti Te'o and his fake girlfriend went to the national championship and played against Alabama and got curb stomped. I mean, just curb stomped, right? They end up going 9-4, 8-5, 10-3 after that. Then coming into the 2016 season, they go 4-8. And everybody was like, what in the world happened? How does Notre Dame, after all the success they've had, fall off that bad, right? So what does Brian Kelly do? Brian cleans house. I mean, he replaced both his coordinators. He replaced, I think, a couple position coaches. I think he also replaced a couple other, like, non on the field staff.
He started doing yoga and stuff. I'm just playing.
He started doing yoga.
He started yelling at folks.
He started yelling at. He said, "I'm hanging out with my family." He started working on that Southern accent because I think he knew eventually he's going to go to LSU at some point. Like, he literally reset he went and got those paddles and went shkaboom, and he reset the program. And then they went on a run. They won 10 games, 12 games, 11 games, 10 games, 11 games, and then he went to LSU. This is what Mike Norvell has to do. I wrote on my notes here, Jesse, 2026, and I circled it. Here's why. Because to me, you're going to go into next year, 2025, and depending on how you handle this offseason, the coaches you bring in, the recruiting you do, the portal recruiting you do, and 2025 is key. Because if you come out of 2025 looking similar to what this season is, because of the buyout, and I know you said ignore the buyout, but you got to add it in there. Because of the buyout, it's a thing. I think you get one more season, 2026, and that season you are literally coaching for your job. If next year looks like this year, any close to it, next year at minimum they have to win 8 games next year. Because if they win less than that, then 2026, you're literally coaching for your job. You will be fired because there's no amount of money that Florida State will owe you because of the investment Florida State has made. Think about it. They've spent almost $200 million in a Doak Campbell renovation. You got $150 million in that football only facility. You got all the money made in your off the field coaching. You got millions of dollars invested into NIL that people are pouring in. You're not going to get for a fan base that is already shelling out thousands of dollars each weekend to travel out of their way to get to Doak Campbell Stadium. If you roll this back in 2027, nah. And the ministry and Michael Alford is too smart for that to say, okay, you know what? This is untenable. We've got to make a change. So the 3 things I think you have to do to survive to past 2026 is, number 1, I think the rest of the season, like you said, it's a wash. There's no bowl game. We got to stop thinking about that, Florida State fans. We're not going to a bowl. It's not happening. The only way it's happening if Jesus comes back and then we're going to the Heaven Bowl. Other than that, we ain't going anywhere else, okay? And so you've got to start thinking about what do you have left on this roster, because you're going to have to hit the transfer portal and you're going to have to hit it hard and with clear eyes and evaluate so well this offseason. So you need to know. So that doesn't mean, like you said, the seniors that are working their butts off, that are playing hard, you keep playing them. But you need to start getting those youngins in there. Free them youngins, hashtag that, right? Charles Lesser said it. So you need to start seeing, because you're going to have to figure out what you are needing to fill from the transfer portal hole in. The second thing you got to do is you got to start mapping the firing and hiring of coaches. To me, Jesse, this is to me, Patrick Surtain, David Johnson, they're the only safe ones. They're the only safe ones. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying you should fire everybody, but I'm just saying that those 2 are the only ones who get out of jail free card. Everybody else should be on the table. And the first 2 people you got to fire, I mean, the moment the snap hits, the clock hits 0 on that Florida game, you got to fire Randy Shannon, and I'm sorry, you got to fire Alex Atkins. I just don't see it anymore. I don't know what he's done. And Chris Tomlin, you got to fire him too. Those are the 3 automatic fires you got to go. But outside of David Johnson and Pastor Surtain, no one else is safe. Odell, I hear speculation is he's probably going to retire. That's a tricky one, but if he doesn't retire, you got to make it happen. You got to say, man, you're going to be an ambassador of this program. We love you. We
go out on your own accord, or make sure you're not here. Yeah,
correct. Because we need dogs. I think your coordinators don't have to be ace recruiters. They got to be good. They got to be better than our current coordinators.
Yeah,
they don't have to be ace recruiters. They just got to be good recruiters. Your position coaches, nah, man. You need to go get elite recruiters. You need to go get people who know the Sharks, who can get the bag in the right places and talk to the right people and get those players in the program. Get those position coaches in this program to recruit, because you got to own the state. The worst part of this, Jesse, and you can see I'm getting really just ticked off about this, is we just got the state of Florida right where we wanted it, where Florida State wanted it. Florida was sucking. Miami wasn't doing very much. They didn't know how to take knees anywhere. It was perfect. It was for you, and you just succeeded it back over to Miami. You got to go get that back. You got to go get those recruiters who can get that thing in. That's the one thing about Mario Cristobal, I will say. The man can't coach, but he can recruit. And now that recruiting is covering for him. And then the last thing you got to do is You have got to take the perspective of portal wins, high school supplements, and you got to go, nah, high school wins, portal supplements. You can't give up on the portal because but you got to be like Texas and Ohio State and Alabama and Georgia, who, man, they're killing it at high school recruiting, and they're finding 4 or 5 portal players that are taking them over the top. It has to shift. It has to shift. And your NIL, I'm sorry, this offseason, go find 5 incredible, maybe even 6 incredible transfer portal players and pay them. But most of your NIL got to go to the high school. I know I was opposite at the beginning of the year, saying, nah, man, you can't be playing high school players that that haven't shown anything. It's obviously you got to go differently. Those are the 3 things you got to do if you want to survive past 2026, in my mind.
No, I agree. And I think you got to see the progress. Like, 1, you have to see the wins on the field, but 2, you also have to see the recruiting progress. Like, if you're like, look at Florida. Like, what is their hope right now? Oh, look at DJ Lagway. Like, he's playing pretty decent. Like, we don't have that right now because we're not seeing the young guys play. They see some young talent that's keeping them buoyed, their hopes. And then, like you said, man, the problem is we always talk down on Florida and Miami because, like, Florida State was terrible for a while and they didn't take control of the state.
Nope.
Well, we had it by the chokehold and we let it go. And that's the problem because you didn't recruit well enough. So, yes, I totally agree. I think you have to reinvent yourself, right?
Yeah.
That goes for the way you do your coaching. That goes for the process of recruiting. I think you have to start fresh, man. You have to look at this thing totally different. Like Mike Norvell, we know he studies the Georgias and the Alabamas with how they rotate their defensive linemen. Well, you need to look at how they recruit too, right?
Yeah.
You need to look at how those programs are built. You need to, like you said, man, you need to get position coaches who, like, you ain't teaching Keon Coleman how to catch a ball if you're Ron Dugan. But you need to go out and get some dogs, man. You've got to be able to do that. Now, you need good coordinators. I also think Mike Norvell needs to bring in a legitimate offensive coordinator. I think he does. Because I think he needs to be able to take his eyes off of the offense and put them on the program so he can say, look, this is not working. This is where I need to go. This is what I need to do. Because, by the time Kenny Dillingham left, and I know he had a really long history of working with Kenny Dillingham as his offensive coordinator, Mike Norvell might still be the play caller, right now. And I'm sure him and Dillingham kind of went back and forth on calling plays there because we always felt like you could kind of tell when someone's calling plays. But either way, like, Mike Norvell had more opportunity, more time to focus that CEO type of head coach. And you notice, like, by the time things were good when Dillingham, yes, he was gone by then, but all the pieces were in place.
Right.
And so it was almost like he could just put things on cruise control. He didn't really have to watch the bones of the program. He could focus on the offense. But now he's not able to do. I don't think you can do both, man. I just don't. I think he needs to have that offensive coordinator. But I think you're right, man. And then I think you really do have to just reinvent the process of this program. You got to go out and make these changes on the staff. You got to get players in here who want to play. You got to reinvent the culture, man. You got to get things back to where this team is playing for the team and not for themselves. And then, I think you're right, man. Like, as bad as the portal feels right now and everybody hates the portal, to get where you want to be, you still are going to have to use the portal to a degree because you have not recruited well enough that you're just going to be able to roll out in 2025 and go out and win 10 games with what you got. You're going to need some pieces and you're going to have to go pay for them. And that's going to come from the portal, but you have to use that to parlay you into better recruiting so that you can become less and less reliant on the portal as time progresses.
Right.
So you can reload like a Georgia. So you can reload like an Alabama. So you have guys that you're not, we think this guy's good based on our evaluations. Like, no, we evaluated this guy for 3 years in high school, and then we developed him for another 2. We're not like, okay, well, this other program didn't develop him well, so now we're dealing with the fallout from that. So I think you do have to do that, man. I think you hit the nail on the head. I think it just has to be a total, like, when this is over, man, Mike Norvell, like, make your staff changes, do all that stuff. Take a week off, man. Just like go wander in the wilderness and find yourself for like a week and then reinvent your process and come back. Because I do think he has earned the right to try and fix this thing. But again, I think you're going to have to really just kind of start fresh and really just give a new look to this program, because right now,
Right.
again, like I said, how well are you going to recruit, man, when you got all the negative things that you're like a corpse on the road, man, and the buzzards are just going to pick you apart until you get up and move yourself off the road.
Right.
So like you have to give a fresh perspective to this program. Now, speaking of freshness around the program, we got a new quarterback. It's
Let's
BROCKtober. It's been
go.
almost an hour. So we got to talk about Brock. Obviously, guys, look, here's the thing about Brock. Like, I'm excited to see a fresh look at quarterback. I'm sure Michael's excited. You're probably excited.
Yes.
If nothing else, we were just tired of seeing the DJU experiment continue to
Yes.
go on. So, like, you know, it needed to happen. It's been time to happen. It's the most terrible time to happen.
Right.
Poor Brock Glenn, man. I mean, this dude can't
Every
catch a
time.
break. I actually tweeted this out today, right? So, like, we know Brock Glenn is going to start. That has now been confirmed. Mike Norvell talked about that in his conference today, or his meeting with the media after practice today. Before you pass judgment on this redshirt freshman quarterback, because, man, I've already seen it. Like, people were already saying, well, you wanted Brock, and then look at, he came in the SMU game. Like, first off, he came into a game that was already a blowout when half the team had already quit playing hard. And then he comes into that game, and like, you drop a pass, he gets clobbered twice. He has a good gain on a screen, which, by the way, he zipped that screen out there, which is something DJU hasn't done.
Correct.
Guess what? Gets brought back for a penalty. So,
Correct.
like, there's a lot. We can't. People are already trying to trash Brock for like 5 dropbacks when everything he missed on one throw. That was pretty much it. But man, when you look at what he's done, first off, keep in mind, like, he missed, before you pass judgment on Brock Glenn, right? He missed a significant portion of last season with a hand injury. We all know that. But think about this, man. Start number 1, you get thrown into the ACC championship game against the number 14 Louisville Cardinals, who had a pretty daggone good defense. Start number 2 against number 4 UGA, probably the best team in the country last year, in the bowl, down every single one of your skill position starters. Now, you had an offensive line there that played against a top 5 defense. Ridiculous. Start number 3 is going to be against number 15 Clemson, behind an offensive line that is top 5 in the most pressures allowed in college football. I actually saw, as we were jumping on the show, a tweet that DJU has faced the highest pressure rate of any Power 4 quarterback, and it's not even close in the Power 4. And you have receivers who are top 5 in drop pass percentage, and you have a run game that ranks 131st of 134 teams. This poor kid has been thrown to the Lions in the Lions Den more times than not and expected to work miracles. So,
yay.
Sorry, Brock. Like, good luck, bro. You're going to need it. But I will say that, like, before you pass judgment on Brock, look, the fact of the matter is Saturday's probably not going to look good, right?
Nope.
No matter what. What I'm interested to see with Brock is, like, all right, you're probably going to wear this one, but then you got a bye week, and then you got Duke. So let's see how he progresses over the next couple of weeks. Because, again, Brock is a guy who's going to be here to help you fix this, potentially, unless he loses the job to Luke or someone, Trevor, or someone in the spring. Then maybe he transfers. Maybe he don't.
Right.
But he's a guy that's potentially going to be here to help you fix this where DJU's not. So it's time to make the switch anyway. And even if it looks bad on Saturday, let's see how he's progressed. Last year, all those starts that we talked about were as a true freshman. And even when you go back to that, this is something that I wanted to share too. People are talking about that ACC championship and that Orange Bowl. Last year, Brock had a 20.8% drop pass percentage and faced pressure at a 47.7% rate, which are both worse than what DJU has dealt with in 2024. And we just said they were top 5 in most pressures and most drop passes. So again, he was up against it last year too. You just want to see, has he gotten better? Has he progressed? He also, if you think about it, in the ACC championship game, they didn't know that he was going to start right away. That was a concussion protocol with Tate. So he got kind of thrown in last minute there. Tate opted out late for the Orange Bowl. So Brock didn't get that entire month to take all the QB1 reps. So now, at least now, he's got a week to take all the reps as quarterback 1. They can tailor the offense to him a little bit. And you hope Mike Norvell does that. Don't run the same offense that you ran for DJU. Again, it's probably still going to look bad against Clemson, but let's see how he progresses now that it's year 2 in the system. Now that he'll have a bye week coming after this, he'll get to play against Duke after that, kind of a more real situation to see what he can do. But I think it's time, man. And I think when you talk about Brock, like he's not going to be a magic pill to come in here and fix one of the worst offenses in the Power Four. He's just not.
Right.
But what he gives you is mobility, and he gives you moxie. And I went back and watched that Georgia game, just the plays where Brock threw the ball because I couldn't stomach to watch the rest of it. And like he can get out of the pocket, he can move the pocket, he can extend plays with his feet and look for things downfield. He is not scared to stand in there and take a shot and deliver the ball downfield. So you get those things. He is not scared. You know, look, there's a name that was there for Brock last year that I can't say on the show because it's a family-friendly name, but it was Big Something Brock. So you can use your imagination there. And so, like, he's not scared to stand in there and throw it, man. He's not scared to take a shot. He's not scared to lower his shoulder and get that first down for you. That's something that we have not seen from DJU. And so I think he does give you those things. But, man, it's not going to look probably good this week, but you want to see how he progresses. And with that being said, you also want to see what you got for next year, man, because we just talked about it. This is your rookie camp going forward now. And then you also talk about like Luke. I mean, Luke is now one play away from being in the mix.
That's wild.
Right. And like people are always like, well, why not Luke instead of Brock? Well, Brock's already been here a year. The playbook is going to be more expanded with Brock. Frankly, I think Luke is too important to the future of this program to put him behind this offensive line, if we're being honest, because he might literally die behind this offensive line because they are so bad. But he could very well get in there. And I think at some point, if let's just say DJU is done for the season, let's just assume that. I don't care if it's Brock, I don't care if it's Luke, and I don't care if it's Trevor. You have to find the answer now. Yeah. Like you've got to find somebody. You have 3 quarterbacks here that we have kind of given you passes for this guy and that guy and this guy and this, all these guys that didn't work out. You got 3 guys that we keep saying like one of these is going to hit, and this is going to be who's going to bring your program back. You got to find out who it is. If it's not Brock, try Luke. If it's not Luke, try Trevor. Try somebody. But at the end of the day, the DJU experiment was done. It was not working out. He's not going to be here to help you fix it next year. So now in steps Brock Glenn. Let's see what he's got, man. Everybody, you know, but, and I'll kick it back to you on this. I just say that to say this is a 22-man and then some with the depth. This is a 22-man sport. This is an 11-man offense.
Correct.
There's only so much one guy can do, right?
Correct.
You have to block for him. You have to catch the ball for him. Now, DJU, a lot of the drops are probably because of his poor accuracy. People say that like the offensive line isn't blocking for DJU because they don't like him. I don't believe that because all these guys are upperclassmen, so they're not going to kill their draft stock because they don't like DJU.
Correct.
So I don't buy that aspect of it. But does this provide a spark? Can he bring a spark to an offense that has a bad supporting cast? Don't necessarily trash Brock if he gets the ball there and they drop it. If he's back there making the read and he gets hit instantly, it's going to depend a lot on what that supporting cast can do. But I think it's a fresh perspective. It's something different, man. It gives guys hope, and it gives you more mobility to help out this offensive line that's struggling. So we'll see how it looks, man. I don't expect it to look great against Clemson, but it can't look much worse than it did with DJU, period.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, let me say this. Can we get Brock like a gift card to like Applebee's or something? We keep putting this man in terrible positions.
Right.
Like, Brock, go get you a 2 for $5 here, man, or 2 for $20, whatever it is at Applebee's. Like, we sorry about this, bruh. We keep putting you in these like impossible situations where you get your brains pulverized in every time. No, here's the thing. Florida State fans, like Jesse said, like, you have to go into this Clemson game with I'm going to say no hope whatsoever. This is not magically going to get better. There's no magic pill to this. Brock doesn't have a magic wand that is automatically going to be better. The notion that the offensive line wasn't blocking for DJ because they didn't like him is asinine. Because when Brock came into the SMU game, the same stuff happened then again, right?
Yep.
The receivers immediately got nailed. The receivers were dropping balls. I mean, it's just the same stuff. So it's not magically going to get better. But the reason why you bring Brock in is to be able to get him now. Hopefully, he's the starting quarterback through the rest of the season. Is to be able to get him these reps now. To get he's going to take it. He's going to take it on the chin from Clemson. But now you go into the bye week, like you said, you get to build off of that. Then you go into the Miami game, the North Carolina game, the Notre Dame game, the Charleston Southern game, and the Florida game. Now you get to see what you have in Brock. And then I think also, and not to like move off of Brock, but then also I think this is opportunity for Mike Norvell to figure out what 4 games, because you don't want to burn his red shirt, that then you can get some look at Luke Kromenhoek. When are you going to get them in those games? At what point, and how much you're going to be able to see him? Because you also need to know kind of where he's at right now anyways. I think for Brock, what you want to see is, can he get the ball out on time? That was one of the things last season that was a problem. He's holding on to the ball way too long. I think also you want to be able to see him read the defense better, right? Be able to make those the defensive read, get off that read 1 to go to read 2, or get the ball to your check down. And then I think the third thing that you don't have with DJ that you do have with Brock is a way more mobile quarterback. So when the play breaks down, when the offensive line breaks down, Brock can actually run the ball. I think a lot of those design QB runs that for inexplicable reason we ran twice on 3rd and 4th down. Gosh, I think you can actually run those with Brock Glenn and actually see a lot more success. Now you have to account for the 11th guy on the offense if you're a defensive coordinator, right? Where you weren't worried about DJ running the ball. If it was 4th and 1, 3rd and 1, okay, yeah, you might have to worry about a sneak. Outside of that, you don't have to worry about him on those RPOs, on those reads. And I think that's where you need to see that. Can he read the defense better? He's mobile. He's going to be able to leverage that. It's just going to be really hard to see a lot of that against Clemson, which is one of the best defensive lines in the country right now. I think that's going to be hard for you to see that. Now, again, it's also not impossible for Brock to get in there and he gives you the spark you need, and this team plays out of its mind. The chances of that, Vegas would put that odds at 1 billion. So I'd love to see what that bet would look like, but who knows?
But you already knew what you were getting with DJU, and it wasn't any different than what you got the first 5 games. So it was worth making a switch. And like you said, I think one of the biggest things is just respecting the ability that he can run. If you run a read option, guess what? This guy might actually pull it for a change.
And
this
get 20 yards.
Right. Like, so you have that ability. You can help move the pocket to get that offensive line some help. So, like, yes, I think there is that part. I think you may see some guys. I'm not going to say they weren't playing hard, but you may see some guys with some renewed effort to play better for Brock Glenn because, Brock Glenn, man, again, the thing is, Brock Glenn is going to play hard because this is his opportunity. I just hope guys play hard for him because they realize this is his opportunity too.
Right.
And, again, that comes back to like making the quarterback switch. If you got to go find some young guys to do it, if it's got to be Landon Thomas or whoever the case may be, Andre Otto on the offensive line, Jalen Early, if you got to go use those guys, then go use them, man. But you got to find guys that are going to play hard for Brock Glenn. And I think he will give this offense a spark. I don't think, again, we've said this 100 times when we talked about Brock, because goodness gracious, we've been calling for him for Brock, are you there? Pick up. We've been calling him for a month. We about to send carrier pigeons to go find Brock Glenn to make sure he's still on the roster.
Smoke signals up,
right? Like he's not going to come in, and we know this. We've seen this. He's not going to come in and go 28 of 30 for 350 and 3 touchdowns. It's just not going to happen. It would be nice, but I think he can get this offense to a better place than where it's been, right? And so you just hope that, again, maybe like Saturday, put a piece of tape over the TV where the score goes. Tape an index card over there. Don't pay it any attention. But hey, crazier things have happened, man. Everybody loves the backup quarterback.
That's right.
You never know. I mean, what Alabama brings in their backup and he wins them a national championship. So you just never know, man.
Look at UNLV. Look at UNLV.
Right.
Their starter left. Their backup comes in. They blow out the team they play next. So
exactly. So like, I'm not saying it's impossible, but I'm just saying that like it may not look great against Clemson because of the supporting cast, right? If you
Right.
were to put him in here with a great offensive line and great receivers, okay, maybe.
Right.
But I think you just want to see how he progresses over the next few weeks, and then you see what you got in Luke and Trevor when the opportunity arises. But at least now, man, it just gives the team hope. It gives the fans something to be interested in,
Right.
instead of the same old experiment
That's
that
right.
wasn't going to be here next year anyway. So,
Yep.
with that being said, we're going to get ready to close things out, but I do want to talk a little bit about that game on Saturday. Of course, we're going to be back on Friday with our game day show where we talk about Florida State and some of the broader college football picture. But let's talk about this Clemson game for just a few minutes as we get ready to close things out here. And Michael, Florida State has a new quarterback, but you might need some new gear. And if you were to need some new gear and you're brave enough to stomach going to Doak Campbell Stadium on
Yep.
Saturday, you should hit up our other sponsor, Alumni Hall, FSU. They got all the gear that you need, all the tailgating supplies. Make sure you check them out in Tallahassee at 1415 Timber Lane Road or shop online at alumnihall.com. Navigate over to the FSU page. They got all kinds of great stuff for you guys. And make sure while you're there to save 10% using code SPEAR. So we appreciate you supporting those guys that support us. So let's talk about this Clemson game real quick. Now, getting into this one. So with Florida State and Clemson, 7:00 on ESPN, there was some question whether it was going to be at 7 or 7:30, but it is 7:00 on ESPN. But it's looking, man, like, first off, this is crazy that Florida State opens up, and it's still, I checked the number just to make sure, per FanDuel, only a 14.5-point underdog at home, which is
That's wild.
that's pretty crazy, man. I think Vegas is cooking the books to make some
They
money on Florida
are.
State. They gotta be crazy stuff. But I mean, I think the SMU game was the first time you were actually underdog all season by six
That's
and a
right.
half points, and you got your doors blown off there.
That's right.
With an over under of 47.5. And so really, when you do the math on that, this game, if you were to take the slight over here, that would put this around 31-17. That feels way too generous there.
Yeah.
But just to give my quick thoughts here, because we don't want to run you guys too long, and we want to save some of this for Friday. But when you look at this Clemson team, they seem to be hitting their stride, and Florida State is just a unmitigated disaster.
Correct.
But I still wonder where this Clemson team is at, right? Because you look at, they came out in game one. They got absolutely smoked by Georgia by 31 points. That's a Georgia team that, man, college football is so crazy. Transitive property in college football doesn't make any sense, because you're like, oh, well, they just lost, or they won by 1 point at Kentucky, but Kentucky just beat Ole Miss. And then, you get to doing that crazy stuff where it's like, well, this doesn't make any sense. But like, they got smoked by Georgia. Then they beat App State. App State I thought they were going to be pretty good to begin the season. They were a G5 playoff contender. They're 2-2 with only one FBS win. I think it was by like 2 points over Eastern Carolina. They got a FCS win. They've been blown out twice this season so far. Once by South Alabama. Then they go and they absolutely beat an NC State team like a drum, who's a bad NC State team. But that NC State team they're terrible. They might be the only team in the country that's worse than Florida State. Then they blow out Stanford this past Saturday. Now, they did beat them 40-14.
Right.
But they only outgained them by 44 yards, 405 to 361. Stanford actually, this is nuts, man. Stanford actually rushed for 236 yards against Clemson. That is wild. I mean, it sucks that you can't run the ball at Florida State, because it looks like you got a golden opportunity to beat them here.
Right.
But Stanford also did have 3 turnovers in that game, and it was only 20-7 with 2 minutes left in the third quarter. So, like, if Brock Glenn can give you a spark, I just still don't know where Clemson is at, right? Are they the team that got smoked by Georgia, or are they the team that's kind of got fat off some really bad teams in App State, NC State, and Stanford there? The problem is, you're a bad team too. You're a cupcake at this point. You're going to help someone else get fat. So, like, I could see this game being 51-10. I could also see where if Brock Glenn actually leads this offense to score more than 20 points, this could be like a 45-24 type of game where you keep it a little bit respectable. It's just hard to say, man. It really depends on how much quit Florida State has on Saturday. I think, how hard these guys play and what Brock Glenn can do at quarterback.
Yeah, I want to, the Seminole in me is like, oh, I want to believe the best. I want to believe that Brock comes out, the offense gets going, and they're able to score, 20 something points, and the defense plays out of its mind, special team plays out of mind, and we win a game winning walk off, field goal, and it be just this beautiful story. And then I wake up from that dream and realize that, again, they're probably not going to be able to do very much. Clemson
Yeah.
is, their quarterback, Cade Klubnik. He's finally. It looks like he's finally figuring it out. He was supposed to be this phenom of a high school recruit, and it kind of took him 2 years to really get into it. But it looks like now, yes, that Georgia game. But let's see, Georgia and Alabama and Texas and Ohio State are on a different level of play right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Cade's starting to figure it out. I mean, 12 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions. I mean, they're putting it on teams, and teams that cannot fight with them in the trenches. Florida State cannot fight with them in the trenches.
No.
Are getting dogged on. I mean, just pulverized. And so you worry that early on, that offensive line, when they come up and they see those big old defensive linemen, those NFL type defensive linemen, that it's just game over. And so, for me, I just what I want to see is the consistency out of Brock, out of some of those playmakers, to try to make the plays that are there. Try not to do too much. Don't try to win the game on your own, Brock. Don't try to win the game on your own. Wide receivers, running backs, just hit the right hole, right? Hit the right hole, and we'll just live to see another day. It would be awesome if they could keep that Clemson offense off the field, right? Yep. If they can just, get some consistently first downs, not be behind the chains, because that'd be the worst thing for this offense. I mean, I think we're one of the worst in the country at converting third downs. I think our average, I saw a stat the other day, our average yards to convert a third down is somewhere around 6 to 7 yards. It's like one of the worst in the country right now.
I thought it was worse than that. I thought it was like 8.2 or something.
It could be. I saw somebody tweeted that stat out the other day, and so I was just like, yeah, that makes sense. When Florida State actually does well, I remember when I was watching the SMU game, I kept thinking to myself, if they can just get 5 yards consistently on first down, then third down doesn't become impossible. Right. But when they get 1 or less yards, I mean, that's for anybody. Last year, Florida State was terrible on first downs, but they were tremendous on third down. Like that. Yeah. That's the thing. This year, we're terrible on first down and we're terrible on third down, because we have to be able to get 5 yards or more on first down to be able to convert those. So if they can keep that offense off the field, if they can get some consistent first down, try to hold Clemson to 30 points, and they can score 14. Listen, it's going to be a loss, but you feel a little bit better about going into the bye week of thinking, okay, you know what? That was a blowout loss, but it wasn't as, because right now I'm thinking like 63-3. That's what I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
Right. And so if they could do those things, then I think you come out of that game, not that we're Moral Gables. That's not how we roll here.
No,
we lose. But you start to see a little bit of signs that, okay, maybe something can happen with this offense moving forward.
Yeah, because you don't want to put Brock in obvious passing situations behind this offensive line, because they're going to pin their ears back and they're going to come get you. Yep. But I know, man, like there is no moral victory. Like this is really depressing that we're even talking about this for a program like Florida State. But like if you were 20-7 in the third with 2 minutes left in the third quarter, like Stanford, you all right, okay, we're turning this thing around. You know what I mean? Like, but it's sad that we're even talking about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think really when you watch this Clemson game, like I mean, I'm not obviously not going to pick up a win, but I think it's just you want to see things, right? After Mike Norvell shook things up a little bit and you're changing quarterbacks, you just want to see signs of progress. You want to see signs of life in this game. Don't watch the scoreboard. Watch what the young guys are doing. Watch how this offense operates with a different quarterback. Just look for positives that maybe you can roll into the bye week and then into the Duke game and actually go win that game. So it's probably going to be ugly on Saturday, but again, you still got to play the game. You still got to line up and play it. So we'll see. Now, we said we were going to wrap up, but we got one more thing to talk about here. That's a little bit of kind of a Debbie Downer at the end of the show. But again, we knew this was going to happen as things continue to happen. This is another kind of damnation on this coaching staff and why we are in the position that we are in. and that is that 4-star wide receiver Malik Clark out of South Carolina. The number one, I believe, player in South Carolina just decommitted from Florida State. And, what's sad about it too, man, is like, I know during the bye week, I think it was, Ron Dugans was actually just up here to see him too, to watch him play.
Yep.
And so out of Rock Hill, South Carolina, he does decommit from Florida State. Look, probably not going to be the last guy to decommit from this class if things continue to go the way that they go. Especially, when you look at like South Carolina's got a little bit of life and things like that. And I know they were hard on him too. But man, I mean, another decommitment from your class, it's just going downhill, man. It's continuing to downtrend. Now, again, like you did get 4-star running back Byron Lewis in the fold recently.
Yep.
But again, this might not be the last decommitment you got. And we've talked about, again, with like Ron Dugans, where it's like, okay, well, he's got some of these guys and you still got a couple guys there. Now, I'm sure people are working really hard to get CJ Wiley and things like that. But man, if the recruits are starting to fall apart, then you got no reason to keep him as well. And we already assumed we would move on, but man, just another hit for Florida State in the recruiting trail. Malik Clark decommits. I'm sure I don't know if they have the thing updated yet, but I mean, you were already like 30th in recruiting. And so now it's probably going to be back down to 35th or something like that. And it's not enough to get it done, man. You can't expect to win at Florida State repeatedly, sustain success at a high level unless you're recruiting in the top 15, top 10. And this just ain't getting it done.
No, it's not getting it done. And, you hate to lose, Clark. Obviously, I think he's trending with South Carolina right now after his decommitment. Also, Dylan McClutchan has been trending. They just posted a flip pick for him to Texas. So, I mean, you knew this was coming with this kind of season. Again, this goes back to what we talked about earlier. These recruits are already there. They were buying into this idea that Florida State was better than what the snub had said. But now with this 1-4 record and what they've shown on the field, if I'm a recruit parent, there's no way I want to send my kid to this because I don't trust it. I don't trust, it looks like a flash in the pan. It looks like this was just a 2-year deal. No, but what I'm saying, it looks like it's just a 2-year deal, but really Florida State's just what they were 2020, 2021. Like this is what really Mike Norvell is. He's really that coach. He's not the coach we saw the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And that's just a hard message to recruit against because what you're putting out on the field is what it is. So we're going to see more of this. Again, what's going to have to happen is obviously the overhaul and the coaching staff. They're going to have to really get into the portal and try to find some really, 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 really good evaluated players. And then they're just going to have to recruit their butts off. And they're going to have to overpay for high school kids and not just any high school kids. If we're going to overpay them, let's go overpay a Jeremiah Smith $2 million. Let's go overpay a Ryan Williams, who's 17 years old, balling out for Bama, $3 million. Let's do it. I don't care. I mean, Tennessee got a quarterback for $8 million.
And look at what he's doing.
And look what he's doing. Let's go do that. Come on now. You have a top 15 NIL budget. Let's put it to use this time for high school players.
And I mean, look at what Jeremiah Smith is doing. You saw the one-handed grab the other day, and here we are leading the country in drop rate or whatever. But yeah, it's just you got, and you may take it on the chin a little bit for 2025 when you have to, because you're going to lose those relationships when you change staff, but you're going to have to bring in staff that can maybe flip some guys or something like that. And 247 did already update. We are now 35th in recruiting rankings, and you are 6th in the ACC. Now the number of recruits matter, right? That is like your average is still higher than these teams, but you're behind Duke right now in recruiting. Now they have 25 commits. You only have 11. Your average is much higher than them, but man, 35th ain't getting it done. Like it's not. You got to. If for no other reason you make changes on the staff at the end of the season, it's got to be for recruiting because this isn't good enough. And if you lose Dalen McCutcheon and it's probably more than that, you're going to have to start going down the list to get backups because you got to sign kids. So you're going to start signing some 3-stars to get them in here just to have bodies. And so you're going to continue to trend downward. So, man, I hate to end the show on a negative note like that, but it literally broke as we were recording. You guys will probably be seeing this on Wednesday. We're actually recording this on Tuesday. But, yeah, man, I hate to see it. There's another hit comes for Florida State. But, again, it just goes to speak to what we just talked about in this episode where, like, man, you got to shake this thing up because you got to stank on this program that you got to get off of it and fast or else you're going to turn this into, man, the lost decade 2.0, the
Jeez.
whatever. I'll say this as we get out of here, Michael. I don't know what's going to happen with Mike Norvell in the end of his tenure. If he's going to stay, if he's going to go, whatever he's going to do. Whoever we get next, I don't want no sayings. No, I don't want no climbs, no do somethings, no have a good days if you want to. I don't want none of that.
No promise notes.
I don't want none of that. Like you saw the Bama game or whatever, where the guy had the eye black on and it was like kill everybody. Like,
yes,
that's who I want.
That's what I want.
That's what I want. Go get that guy. We ain't playing for clicks. We're, whatever, all that type of stuff. Get me that. I don't want no more saying. I don't want to climb. I don't want to fall. I don't want to sit sideways. I don't want to do nothing or something. None of that. Go find me somebody good. Daggone it. Love you guys.
Love it.
Mean it. We'll catch you on the next one. Thank you guys for tuning in. Sorry we took a week off. Obviously, we had no power and stuff. So that's kind of trending like Florida State, but it is what it is. We appreciate you guys watching. Make sure you check out the Autograph app. Make sure you check out Alumni Hall. We appreciate those guys for supporting us. I'll link it below. Like and subscribe if you've watched this episode and you've enjoyed it. If you're on the podcast version, rate and review helps get us out to other Noles fans. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. As always, go Noles.
Go Noles.